The syntax of JavaScript is the set of rules that define a correctly structured JavaScript program. The examples below make use of the alert function for standard text output. The JavaScript standard library lacks an official standard text output function. However, given that JavaScript is mainly used for client-side scripting within modern web browsers, and that almost all web browsers provide the alert function, alert is used in the examples. Origins. Brendan Eich summarized the ancestry of the syntax in the first paragraph of the JavaScript 1.1 specification as follows. JavaScript borrows most of his syntax from Java, but also inherits from Awk and Perl, with some indirect influence from Self in its object prototype system. Basics. Case sensitivity. JavaScript is case sensitive. It is common to start the name of a constructor with a capitalized letter, and the name of a function or variable with a lowercase letter. Whitespace and semicolons, spaces, tabs and new lines used outside of string constants are called whitespace. Unlike C, whitespace in JavaScript source can directly impact semantics. Because of a technique called automatic semicolon insertion, some statements that are well formed when a new line is parsed will be considered complete. Some authorities advise supplying statement terminating semicolons explicitly because it may lessen unintended effects of the automatic semicolon insertion. There are two issues. 5 tokens can either begin a statement or be the extension of a complete statement. And 5 restricted productions, where line breaks are not allowed in certain positions, potentially yielding incorrect parsing. The 5 problematic tokens are the open parenthesis opening round bracket, open bracket opening square bracket, // and plus and dash. Of these, open parenthesis is common in the immediately invoked function expression pattern, and open bracket occurs sometimes, while others are quite rare. The example given in the spec is with the suggestion that the preceding statement be terminated with a semicolon. Some suggest instead the use of leading semicolons on lines starting with OR, so the line is not accidentally joined with a previous one. This is known as a defensive semicolon, and is particularly recommended because code may otherwise become ambiguous when it is rearranged. For example, initial semicolons are also sometimes used at the start of JavaScript libraries, in case they are appended to another library which omits a trailing semicolon, as this can result in ambiguity of the initial statement. The 5 restricted productions are return, throw, break, continue, and post-increment-decrement. In all cases inserting semicolons does not fix the problem, but makes the parsed syntax clear, making the error easier to detect. Return and throw take an optional value, while break and continue take an optional label. In all cases the advice is to keep the value or label on the same line as the statement. This most often shows up in the return statement, where one might return a large object literal, which might be accidentally placed starting on a new line. For post-increment-decrement, there is potential ambiguity with pre-increment-decrement, and again it is recommended to simply keep these on the same line. Comments. Comment syntax is the same as in C++ and many other languages. Variables. Variables in standard JavaScript have no type attached, and any value can be stored in any variable. Variables are declared with a var statement. Multiple variables can be declared at once. An identifier must start with a letter, underscore, or $sign. Subsequent characters can also be digits. Because JavaScript is case-sensitive, letters include the characters A through Z, and the characters A through Z. Starting with JavaScript 1.5, ISO 8859-1 or Unicode letters can be used in identifiers. In certain JavaScript implementations, the @ sign can be used in an identifier, but this is contrary to the specifications and not supported in newer implementations. Variables are lexically scoped at function level, and this does not depend on order. If a variable is declared inside a function, then inside the function, the name will resolve to that variable. This is equivalent in block scoping to variables being forward declared at the top of the function, and is referred to as hoisting. However, the variable value is undefined until it is initialized, and forward reference is not possible. Thus a var x equals 1 statement in the middle of the function is equivalent to a var x declaration statement at the top of the function, and an x equals 1 assignment statement at that point in the middle of the function. Only the declaration is hoisted, not the assignment. Function statements, whose effect is to declare a variable of type function and assign a value to it, are similar to variable statements, but in addition to hoisting the declaration, they also hoist the assignment as if the entire statement appeared at the top of the containing function and thus forward reference is also possible. The location of a function statement within an enclosing function is irrelevant. Block scoping can be produced by wrapping the entire block in a function and then executing it. This is known as the immediately invoked function expression pattern. Variables declared outside any function are global. If a variable is declared in a higher scope, it can be accessed by child functions. Here is an example of variable declarations and global values. When JavaScript tries to resolve an identifier, it looks in the local function scope. If this identifier is not found, it looks in the outer function that declared the local one, and so on along the scope chain until it reaches the global scope where global variables reside. If it is still not found, JavaScript will raise a reference error exception. When assigning an identifier, JavaScript goes through exactly the same process to retrieve this identifier, except that if it is not found in the global scope, it will create the variable as a property of the global object. As a consequence, a variable never declared will be global if assigned. Declaring a variable in the global code, assigning a never declared identifier or adding a property to the global object will also create a new global variable. Note that JavaScript's strict mode forbids the assignment of an undeclared variable, which avoids global namespace pollution. Primitive data types. The JavaScript language provides a handful of primitive data types. Some of the primitive data types also provide a set of named values that represent the extents of the type boundaries. These named values are described within the appropriate sections below. Undefined. The value of undefined is assigned to all uninitialized variables, and is also returned when checking for object properties that do not exist. In a Boolean context, the undefined value is considered a false value. Note: undefined is considered a genuine primitive type. Unless explicitly converted, the undefined value may behave unexpectedly in comparison to other types that evaluate to false in a logical context. Note: there is no built-in language literal for undefined. Thus is not a foolproof way to check whether a variable is undefined, because in versions before ECMAScript 5, it is legal for someone to write var undefined equals undefined now. A more robust approach is to compare using functions like this won't work as expected. Here, calling is undefined, my var, raises a reference error if my var is an unknown identifier, whereas type of my var undefined doesn't. Null, unlike undefined, null is often set to indicate that something has been declared but has been defined to be empty. In a Boolean context, the value of null is considered a false value in JavaScript. Note: null is a true primitive type within the JavaScript language, of which null is the single value. As such, when performing checks that enforce type checking, the null value will not equal other false types. Surprisingly, null is considered an object by type of number. Numbers are represented in binary as IEEE 754 doubles, which provides an accuracy of nearly 16 significant digits. Because they are floating point numbers, they do not always exactly represent real numbers, including fractions. This becomes an issue when comparing or formatting numbers. For example, as a result, a routine such as the toFixed method should be used to round numbers whenever they are formatted for output. Numbers may be specified in any of these notations. The extents plus a, and nan of the number type may be obtained by two program expressions. These three special values correspond and behave as the IEEE 754 describes them. The number constructor, or a unary plus or, may be used to perform explicit numeric conversion. When used as a constructor, a numeric wrapper object is created. String. A string in JavaScript is a sequence of characters. In JavaScript, Strings can be created directly by placing the series of characters between double or single quotes. You can access individual characters within a string using the char_at method. This is the preferred way when accessing individual characters within a string because it also works in non-modern browsers. In modern browsers, individual characters within a string can be accessed through the same notation as arrays. However, JavaScript strings are immutable. Applying the equality operator to two strings returns true if the strings have the same contents, which means, of the same length and containing the same sequence of characters. Thus, you cannot use quotes of the same type inside quotes unless they are escaped. It is possible to create a string using the string constructor. These objects have a value of method returning the primitive string wrapped within them. Equality between two string objects does not behave as with string primitives. Alerts. Alerts are a common JavaScript feature. Here is an example. This will display a window with the contents you specify. Boolean. JavaScript provides a Boolean data type with true and false literals. The type of operator returns the string Boolean for these primitive types. When used in a logical context, 0, -0, null, nan, undefined, and the empty string evaluate as false due to automatic type coercion. The complement evaluates as true, including the strings 0, false, and any object. Automatic type coercion by the equality comparison operators can be avoided by using the type-checked comparison operators. When type conversion is required, JavaScript converts string, number, Boolean, or object operands as follows: number and string. The string is converted to a number value. JavaScript attempts to convert the string numeric literal to a number type value. First, a mathematical value is derived from the string numeric literal. Next, this value is rounded to nearest number type value. Boolean. If one of the operands is a Boolean, the Boolean operand is converted to 1 if it is true or to 0 if it is false. Object. If an object is compared with a number or string, JavaScript attempts to return the default value for the object. An object is converted to a primitive string or number value, using the value of or to string methods of the object. If this fails, a runtime error is generated. Douglas Crockford advocates the terms truthy and falsy to describe how values of various types behave when evaluated in a logical context, especially in regard to edge cases. The binary logical operators returned a Boolean value in early versions of JavaScript, but now they return one of the operands instead. The left operand is returned if it can be evaluated as false, in the case of conjunction, or true, in the case of disjunction. Otherwise the right operand is returned. Automatic type coercion by the comparison operators may differ for cases of mixed Boolean and number-compatible operands because the Boolean operand will be compared as a numeric value. This may be unexpected. An expression can be explicitly cast to a Boolean primitive by doubling the logical negation operator, using the Boolean function, or using the conditional operator. The new operator can be used to create an object wrapper for a Boolean primitive. However, the type of operator does not return Boolean for the object wrapper, it returns object. Because all objects evaluate as true, a method such as value of, or to string, must be used to retrieve the wrapped value. For explicit coercion to the Boolean type, Mozilla recommends that the Boolean function be used in preference to the Boolean object. Native objects. The JavaScript language provides a handful of native objects. JavaScript native objects are considered part of the JavaScript specification. JavaScript environment notwithstanding, this set of objects should always be available. Array. An array is a JavaScript object prototyped from the array constructor specifically designed to store data values indexed by integer keys. Arrays, unlike the basic object type, are prototyped with methods and properties to aid the programmer in routine tasks. As in the C family, arrays use a zero-based indexing scheme. A value that is inserted into an empty array by means of the push method occupies the zeroth index of the array. Arrays have a length property that is guaranteed to always be larger than the largest integer index used in the array. It is automatically updated if one creates a property with an even larger index. Writing a smaller number to the length property will remove larger indices. Elements of arrays may be accessed using normal object property access notation. The above two are equivalent. It's not possible to use the dot notation or strings with alternative representations of the number. Declaration of an array can use either an array literal or the array constructor. Arrays are implemented so that only the defined elements use memory. They are sparse arrays. Setting my array, 10, equals something and my array, 57, equals something other only uses space for these two elements, just like any other object. The length of the array will still be reported as 58. One can use the object declaration literal to create objects that behave much like associative arrays in other languages. One can use the object and array declaration literals to quickly create arrays that are associative, multidimensional, or both. Date. A date object stores a signed millisecond count with 0 representing January 1, 1970 0 o'clock UT and a range of A plus or minus 108 days. There are several ways of providing arguments to the date constructor. Note that months are zero-based. Methods to extract fields are provided, as well as a useful toString. Error. Custom error messages can be created using the error class. Nested within conditional statements, such instantiations can substitute for try-catch blocks. Math. The math object contains various math-related constants and functions. All the trigonometric functions use angles expressed in radians, not degrees or grads. Regular expression. Character classes. Character matching. Repeaters. Anchors. Subexpression. Flags. Advanced methods. Capturing groups. Function. Every function in JavaScript is an instance of the function constructor. The add function above may also be defined using a function expression. There exists a shorthand for assigning a function expression to a variable, and is as follows. A function instance has properties and methods. Operators. The plus operator is overloaded, it is used for string concatenation and arithmetic addition. This may cause problems when inadvertently mixing strings and numbers. As a unary operator, it can convert a numeric string to a number. Arithmetic. JavaScript supports the following binary arithmetic operators. Plus addition, subtraction, multiplication, /division, percent modulus. JavaScript supports the following unary arithmetic operators. Plus unary conversion of string to number, unary negation, plus increment, decrement. Assignment. Equals assign, plus equals add and assign, equals subtract and assign, equals multiply and assign, / equals divide and assign, percent equals modulus and assign. Assignment of primitive types. Assignment of object types. Destructuring assignment. In Mozilla's JavaScript, since version 1.7, destructuring assignment allows the assignment of parts of data structures to several variables at once. The left-hand side of an assignment is a pattern that resembles an arbitrarily nested object array literal containing L values at its leaves which are to receive the substructures of the assigned value. Comparison. Equal. Equals not equal, greater than, equals greater than or equal to, less than, equals less than or equal to, identical. Not identical. When comparing variables which are objects they are considered to be different if their objects are not the same object, even if the values of them are the same, so var obj1 equals a 1. Var obj2 equals a 1. Var obj3 equals obj1. Alert, obj1 obj2. False, alert, obj3 obj1. True. See also string. Logical. JavaScript provides for logical operators, unary negation, binary disjunction and conjunction, ternary conditional. In the context of a logical operation, any expression evaluates to true except the following: strings, numbers, 0, -0, nan, special, null, undefined, boolean, false. the Boolean function can be used to explicitly convert to a primitive of type Boolean. The not operator evaluates its operand as a Boolean, and returns the negation. Using the operator twice in a row, as a double negative, explicitly converts an expression to a primitive of type Boolean. The ternary operator can also be used for explicit conversion. Expressions that use features such as post-euro incrementation have an anticipated side effect. JavaScript provides short-circuit evaluation of expressions. The right operand is only executed if the left operand does not suffice to determine the value of the expression. In early versions of JavaScript and script, the binary logical operators returned a Boolean value. However, all contemporary implementations return one of their operands instead. Programmers who are more familiar with the behavior in C might find this feature surprising, but it allows for a more concise expression of patterns like null coalescing. Bitewise, JavaScript supports the following binary bitewise operators: and, or, XOR. Shift left, shift right. Copies of the leftmost bit are shifted in from the left. Shift right. For positive numbers, and yield the same result. JavaScript supports the following unary bitewise operator: not, string, equals assignment, plus concatenation, plus equals concatenate and assign. Examples: control structures, compound statements, a pair of curly brackets A and an enclosed sequence of statements constitute a compound statement, which can be used wherever a statement can be used. If, else. This is also possible. Conditional operator. The conditional operator creates an expression that evaluates as one of two expressions depending on a condition. This is similar to the if statement that selects one of two statements to execute depending on a condition. That is, the conditional operator is to expressions what if is to statements. Is the same as. Unlike the if statement, the conditional operator cannot omit its else branch. Switch statement. The syntax of the JavaScript switch statement is as follows. Break is optional. However, it is usually needed, since otherwise code execution will continue to the body of the next case block. Add a break statement to the end of the last case as a precautionary measure, in case additional cases are added later. Strings literal values can also be used for the case values. Expressions can be used instead of values. Case default is optional. Braces are required. For loop, the syntax of the JavaScript for loop is as follows. Or. For. In loop, the syntax of the JavaScript for. In loop is as follows. Iterates through all enumerable properties of an object. Iterates through all used indices of array including all user-defined properties of array object if any. Thus it may be better to use a traditional for loop with a numeric index when iterating over arrays. There are differences between the various web browsers with regard to which properties will be reflected with the for. In loop statement. In theory, this is controlled by an internal state property defined by the ECMAScript standard called onTenum, but in practice each browser returns a slightly different set of properties during introspection. It is useful to test for a given property using if. Thus, adding a method to the array prototype with array prototype new method equals function may cause for. In loops to loop over the method's name. While loop, the syntax of the JavaScript while loop is as follows. Do. While loop, the syntax of the JavaScript do. While loop is as follows. With. The with statement adds all of the given object's properties and methods into the following block's scope, letting them be referenced as if they were local variables. Note the absence of document before each getElement by id invocation. The semantics are similar to the with statement of Pascal. Because the availability of with statements hinders program performance and is believed to reduce code clarity, this statement is not allowed in strict mode. Labels. JavaScript supports nested labels in most implementations. Loops or blocks can be labeled for the break statement, and loops for continue. Although goto is a reserved word, goto is not implemented in JavaScript. Functions. A function is a block with a parameter list that is normally given a name. A function may use local variables. If you exit the function without a return statement, the value undefined is returned. Functions are first-class objects and may be assigned to other variables. The number of arguments given when calling a function may not necessarily correspond to the number of arguments in the function definition. A named argument in the definition that does not have a matching argument in the call will have the value undefined. Within the function, the arguments may also be accessed through the arguments object. This provides access to all arguments using indices, including those beyond the number of named arguments, sort, etc. Primitive values are passed by value. For objects, it is the reference to the object that is passed. Functions can be declared inside other functions, and access the outer function's local variables. Furthermore, they implement foreclosures by remembering the outer function's local variables even after the outer function has exited. Objects, for convenience, types are normally subdivided into primitives and objects. Objects are entities that have an identity and that map property names to values. Objects may be thought of as associative arrays or hashes, and are often implemented using these data structures. However, objects have additional features, such as a prototype chain, which ordinary associative arrays do not have. JavaScript has several kinds of built-in objects, namely array, boolean, date, function, math, number, object, regexp and string. Other objects are host objects, defined not by the language but by the runtime environment. For example, in a browser, typical host objects belong to the DOM. Creating objects can be created using a constructor or an object literal. The constructor can use either a built-in object function or a custom function. It is a convention that constructor functions are given a name that starts with a capital letter. Object literals and array literals allow one to easily create flexible data structures. This is the basis for JSON, which is a simple notation that uses JavaScript-like syntax for data exchange. Methods. A method is simply a function that has been assigned to a property name of an object. Unlike many object-oriented languages, there is no distinction between a function definition and a method definition. Rather, the distinction occurs during function calling. A function can be called as a method. When called as a method, the standard local variable this is just automatically set to the object instance to the left of the dot. In the example below, foo is being used as a constructor. There is nothing special about a constructor, it is just a plain function that initializes an object. When used with a new keyword, as is the norm, this is set to a newly created blank object. Note that in the example below, foo is simply assigning values to slots, some of which are functions. Thus it can assign different functions to different instances. There is no prototyping in this example. Constructor functions simply assign values to slots of a newly created object. The values may be data or other functions. Example, manipulating an object. The constructor itself is referenced in the object's prototype's constructor slot. So, functions are objects themselves, which can be used to produce an effect similar to static properties as shown below. Object deletion is rarely used as the scripting engine will garbage collect objects that are no longer being referenced. Inheritance. JavaScript supports inheritance hierarchies through prototyping in the manner of self. In the following example, the derived class inherits from the base class. When D is created as a derived, the reference to the base instance of base is copied to dBase. Derived does not contain a value for a base function, so it is retrieved from base when a base function is accessed. This is made clear by changing the value of base a base function, which is reflected in the value of D a base function. Some implementations allow the prototype to be accessed or set explicitly using the proto slot as shown below. The following shows clearly how references to prototypes are copied on instance creation, but that changes to a prototype can affect all instances that refer to it. In practice, many variations of these themes are used, and it can be both powerful and confusing. Exception handling. JavaScript includes a try, catch, Finally, exception handling statement to handle runtime errors. The try, catch. Finally statement catches exceptions resulting from an error or a throw statement. Its syntax is as follows. Initially, the statements within the try block execute. If an exception is thrown, the script's control flow immediately transfers to the statements in the catch block, with the exception available as the error argument. Otherwise, the catch block is skipped. The catch block can throw error value if it does not want to handle a specific error. In any case, the statements in the finally block are always executed. This can be used to free resources, although memory is automatically garbage collected. Either the catch or the finally clause may be omitted. The catch argument is required. The Mozilla implementation allows for multiple catch statements, as an extension to the ECMAScript standard. They follow a syntax similar to that used in Java. In a browser, the on-error event is more commonly used to trap exceptions. Native functions and methods, not related to web browsers. Eval evaluates expression string parameter, which can include assignment statements. Variables local to functions can be referenced by the expression. See also, comparison of JavaScript-based source code editors, JavaScript, Notes, JavaScript 1.1 Specification, Flanagan, David. JavaScript, The Definitive Guide. PA 16. ISBN A978-0-596-10199-2. Omitting semicolons is not a good programming practice. You should get into the habit of inserting them. ABC JavaScript semicolon insertion, everything you need to know, Inimino, Friday, May 28, 2010. Semicolons in JavaScript are optional, by Miss Lavarinia, May 7, 2010. Values, variables, and literals, MDC. Mozilla Developer Network September 16, 2010. JavaScript Scoping and Hoisting, Ben Cherry, Adequately Good, February 8, 2010. ECMA 262.5e edition clarified this confusing behavior, introducing the notion of declarative environment record and object environment record. With this formalism, the global object is the object environment record of the global lexical environment. Comparison operators, MDC Doc Center. Mozilla August 5, 2010. Retrieved March 5, 2011. The Elements of JavaScript Style. Douglas Crockford. Retrieved March 5, 2011. ECMA 262, Edition 3, 7.5.3 Future Reserved Words, References, David Flanagan, Paula Ferguson, JavaScript The Definitive Guide, O'Reilly & Associates, ISBN 0-596-10199-6, Danny Goodman, JavaScript Bible, Wiley, John & Sons, ISBN 0-7645-3342-8, Thomas A. Powell, Fritz Schneider, JavaScript The Complete Reference, McGraw-Hill Companies, ISBN 0-07-219127-9, Emily Vanderveer, JavaScript for Dummies, 4th edition, Wiley, ISBN 0-7645-7659-3, External links, A Reintroduction to JavaScript, Mozilla Developer Center, ECMAScript Standard References, ECMA 262, Interactive JavaScript Lessons, Example-based, JavaScript on About.com, Lessons and Explanation, Mozilla Developer Center Core References for JavaScript versions 1.5, 1.4, 1.3 and 1.2, Mozilla JavaScript Language Documentation, Comparison Operators in JavaScript,